My friends, have you ever noticed? In every situation, we have two choices: react like fire or respond like water. Fire burns, water cools. Fire destroys, water saves. The question is, when life tests us, when people provoke us, do we choose to be the fire or the water? Pause before you react. This single habit can transform your entire life. You see, in the heat of the moment, when someone says something hurtful, when things don't go your way, or when life throws an unexpected challenge at you, your mind immediately wants to react. It wants to fire back, defend itself, or explode with anger. But in that very instant, if you can pause just for a few seconds, you create a powerful space between stimulus and response. And in that space lies your freedom, your wisdom, and your peace. Think about it. How many times have you said something in anger only to regret it later? Words once spoken cannot be taken back. Actions once done in haste cannot be undone. But if you had paused just for a heartbeat, you would have given yourself the chance to choose differently. You would have given yourself the power to respond with clarity instead of confusion, with patience instead of panic, with compassion instead of cruelty. A pause is not weakness, it is strength. It is the mark of someone who refuses to be a slave to circumstances, who refuses to be controlled by emotions. Imagine you are driving and suddenly a car swerves in front of you. If you slam the horn and shout in anger, nothing changes except your blood pressure. But if you pause, breathe, and think, maybe you'll realize that driver could be rushing someone to the hospital. That pause allows empathy to rise. That pause saves your peace. The truth is, reacting instantly feels natural, but it is often destructive. Responding after a pause feels unnatural at first, but it is always constructive. The greatest leaders, the happiest families, the most peaceful people, all have mastered this art of pausing. Because calmness is not about never feeling anger or fear. It's about not letting those emotions control your actions. So next time life presses your buttons, remember this: you are not a machine. You are a human being with the gift of choice. Don't let anger choose for you. Don't let stress choose for you. Pause, breathe, then let wisdom choose for you. That tiny pause could change the outcome of an entire day or even an entire life. Control what you can, accept what you can't. This is one of the most liberating principles you can live by. Because the truth is, a big part of our stress doesn't come from what's happening. It comes from fighting things we cannot change. We wrestle with reality, and reality always wins. Imagine standing at the seashore, screaming at the waves to stop. You can shout, you can cry, you can shake your fists at the ocean. But the waves will keep coming. No matter how much you resist, they won't listen to you. Life works in the same way. Some things are simply not in your control. Think about it. The weather is not in your control. The traffic on the road is not in your control. The way other people behave is not in your control. Yet, how often do we exhaust ourselves getting angry at these very things? A person shouts at you, and you get disturbed for the whole day. A plan doesn't go the way you expected, and you let frustration eat away at your peace. But pause for a moment and ask, was it ever in my control? If not, why give it the power to ruin me? What is in your control is how you choose to respond. You may not control the storm outside, but you can control whether your mind becomes a storm inside. You may not control the traffic jam, but you can choose to listen to music, call a loved one, or even just enjoy the quiet moment. You may not control someone's harsh words, but you can control whether you absorb their negativity or protect your peace. When you stop wasting energy on what's beyond your reach, you suddenly discover how much energy you have to improve what is within your reach. There's a beautiful wisdom in learning to surrender. Not surrender as in giving up, but surrender as in trusting the flow of life. Imagine holding a rope tightly, trying to pull it your way when life is pulling it the other way. The tighter you grip, the more your hands burn. The moment you let go, the pain stops. Acceptance doesn't mean you like what's happening. It means you refuse to let it destroy you. And here's the paradox. The more you accept what you cannot change, the more strength you have to change what you can. You stop wasting time on the impossible, and you focus on the possible. You stop shouting at the waves, and you start learning how to surf them. So when life tests you, ask yourself two simple questions. Is this in my control? If yes, what can I do? If no, what can I learn? The first keeps you proactive. The second keeps you peaceful. And when you master this balance, control what you can, accept what you can't, you'll discover a deep calmness that no storm can shake. Detach, don't absorb. This is one of the greatest secrets to staying calm in the middle of chaos. Most of the time, what disturbs our peace is not the situation itself, but the way we let it sink inside us. People will always have opinions, judgments, moods, and outbursts. That's their energy. But the mistake we make is carrying it home in our hearts, letting it sit on our shoulders, and replaying it in our minds again and again until it poisons our peace. Detachment doesn't mean you stop caring. It means you stop carrying what was never yours to hold. Imagine you are walking down the street and someone hands you a heavy bag of garbage. Would you willingly carry it home? Of course not. Yet when someone throws their anger at you or their negativity at you, you often pick it up unconsciously and carry it with you the whole day. Their 5 minutes of frustration becomes your 5 hours of stress. But the truth is that garbage was never yours. If you don't pick it up, it won't smell in your life. If you don't absorb it, it won't live inside you. Detachment is like an umbrella in the rain. The rain of negativity may fall all around, but when you have the umbrella of detachment, you stay dry inside. You observe what is happening without allowing it to drench you. For example, a colleague criticizes you harshly. You could absorb it, replay their words, feel small and angry, or you could detach, reflect calmly, and ask yourself, is there something constructive here for me to learn? If yes, take the lesson and leave the poison behind. If no, simply let their words pass like clouds in the sky. You cannot stop clouds from forming, but you can stop yourself from chasing them. Some people believe detachment means indifference, but that's not true. Indifference says, I don't care. Detachment says, I care enough to not let your negativity control my state of mind. When you detach, you still feel compassion. You still wish people well, but you don't let their storms enter your inner home. There is a story of a monk who was insulted by a passerby. The man shouted, cursed, and left. Another person who witnessed this asked the monk, how are you still so calm? Didn't his words hurt you? The monk smiled and said, if someone offers you a gift and you don't accept it, who does the gift belong to? The man replied, to the one who offered it. The monk said, exactly. His anger was his gift. I chose not to accept it, so it stays with him, not with me. That is detachment. In life, you can't stop people from being angry, jealous, rude, or negative. That's their karma, their choice, their burden. What you can do is choose not to absorb it. Protect your mind the way you protect your home. You wouldn't let just anyone walk in with muddy shoes. Why let them walk into your heart with dirty emotions? So remember, when the world throws its chaos at you, detach, don't absorb. Let people's energy remain theirs. Carry only what is pure, peaceful, and purposeful inside you. That way, no matter what happens outside, you remain calm inside. Choose response over reaction. This is where true mastery of calmness begins. A reaction is automatic, impulsive, and often fueled by raw emotion. A response, on the other hand, is thoughtful, deliberate, and guided by wisdom. The difference between the two can completely change the outcome of any situation. Think of it like this. When you throw a stone into still water, it ripples outward in circles. A reaction is like a violent splash, disturbing everything around it. A response is like gently placing that stone, allowing the ripples to move with grace. When someone insults you, the first instinct of the mind is to react, to defend, to attack back, to prove them wrong. That's reaction. But what happens after? You replay the incident in your head, you lose peace, and the situation often escalates. But if you choose to pause, think, and respond, the energy shifts. You may choose silence, you may choose humor, you may even choose to walk away. A response doesn't mean you stay silent forever. It means you act with clarity instead of confusion, with purpose instead of impulse. Think about fire and water. If a spark falls and you react like fire, you will create an explosion. But if you respond like water, you will put out the flame before it spreads. Reaction is about ego. It says, "How dare you do this to me?" Response is about wisdom. It asks, "What is the best outcome in this situation?" One comes from the heat of the moment. The other comes from the coolness of reflection. Great leaders, great parents, great friends, they all know this secret. A child breaks something valuable. If a parent reacts in anger, the child remembers the fear, not the lesson. If the parent responds with calm correction, the child learns responsibility, not shame. In the workplace, if a leader reacts to mistakes with shouting, the team becomes nervous and fearful. But if the leader responds with guidance, the team grows stronger. Reaction creates distance, response builds connection. There's a famous saying, between stimulus and response, there is a space, and in that space lies our growth and freedom. Most people don't recognize that space. They let reaction take over instantly. But calmness is about noticing that small gap and expanding it. In that pause, you ask, what will help? What will harm? What is the bigger picture here? That simple awareness transforms everything. And remember this, reacting may give you short-term satisfaction, but responding gives you long-term peace. When you react, you may win the argument but lose the relationship. When you respond, you may lose the argument but save the relationship. And at the end of the day, relationships matter more than egos. So the next time you are triggered, remember you have two doors in front of you. One says reaction, the other says response. If you open the door of reaction, you may step into conflict, regret, and unrest. If you open the door of response, you walk into peace, respect, and wisdom. The choice is always yours. Calmness is not about never feeling angry. It's about refusing to let that anger decide your action. Respond, don't react, and you'll discover a strength inside you that nothing outside can shake. Train your breath, calm your mind. It may sound so simple, but it is one of the most powerful tools we have to master ourselves in any situation. You see, the mind and the breath are deeply connected. When your mind is restless, your breathing becomes shallow and rapid. And when your breathing is shallow and rapid, your mind becomes even more restless. It's like a cycle feeding itself. But the beauty is, while it's difficult to directly control the racing thoughts of the mind, You can control the rhythm of your breath. And the moment you control your breath, your mind begins to follow. Think about what happens when you're angry. Your chest rises and falls quickly. Your breath becomes fast, almost out of control. If you remain in that state, your anger will only grow stronger. But if in that very moment you take a deep, conscious breath in through your nose, hold it gently and exhale slowly, you will notice something almost magical. Your heart rate begins to slow down, the storm in your mind begins to settle, and suddenly you are no longer drowning in the emotion. The emotion is still there, but it no longer owns you. This is why almost every ancient practice, from yoga to meditation, puts such emphasis on the breath. The breath is the bridge between body and mind, between chaos and calm. Monks and sages have known for centuries that if you learn to master your breathing, you learn to master your emotions. It's like having a remote control for your inner world. When the outside world becomes noisy, you press pause by slowing your breath. Even science today confirms it. Studies show that slow, deep breathing activates the parasympathetic nervous system, the system responsible for relaxation, healing, and balance. Just a few minutes of conscious breathing can lower blood pressure, reduce stress hormones, and bring clarity of thought. That's why when someone is panicking, the first advice we give is take a deep breath. It's not just a saying, it's biology working in your favor. Imagine being in a heated argument. Voices are rising, emotions are burning, and you can feel yourself about to explode. In that moment, if you stop and take 3 deep breaths, you give yourself a chance to step out of the fire. Those few breaths create a gap wide enough for wisdom to enter. Suddenly, you see the situation differently. You're no longer controlled by your anger. You are back in control of yourself. Or think of the times when anxiety grips you, when the future feels uncertain and your mind is racing with 1,000 what ifs. Your breath in that moment is probably short and shallow. But if you deliberately slow it down, inhale deeply, exhale fully, you send a signal to your mind, I am safe, I am calm, I am present. And slowly, the storm of anxiety begins to lose its power. Training your breath is like training a muscle. At first it feels unnatural, because most of us go through life breathing unconsciously. But with practice, just a few minutes each day, you begin to notice a shift. Your reactions soften, your patience grows, your clarity sharpens. You don't just breathe to survive anymore. You breathe to live with balance. So the next time you feel anger rising, fear tightening, or stress building, remember this: the key to calming your mind is already with you. It's not outside, it's not in someone else's hands. It's in your breath. And the one who can control their breath can truly control their life. Perspective changes everything. This is one of the most underestimated truths about life. You see, nothing in this world has a fixed meaning. Events happen, people act, situations arise, but it is our perspective that decides whether those events become problems or opportunities, whether those actions become insults or lessons, whether those situations become prisons or pathways. 2 people can go through the exact same circumstance, and one will crumble while the other will grow. Why? Because of perspective. Imagine 2 individuals standing in front of the same glass of water. One says it's half empty. The other says it's half full. The water didn't change, the glass didn't change, only the perspective changed. And yet, that simple shift in how they looked at the same thing determined how they felt, how they acted, and how they lived that moment. Life is often like that glass, unchanging in its facts, but transforming in its meaning. depending on how we choose to see it. Think about a setback. One person loses their job and says, "My life is over. I am worthless." Another person loses the same job and says, "This is painful, yes. But maybe this is the push I needed to find a better path." The first person drowns in despair. The second begins a new chapter. Same event, different outcomes, only because of perspective. When you face challenges, your mind will try to convince you that the mountain in front of you is too big, too heavy, too impossible to climb. But if you change your perspective, the mountain doesn't become smaller, but your inner strength becomes bigger. What once looked like a wall suddenly looks like a staircase. What once felt like punishment suddenly feels like preparation. Perspective even changes relationships. Suppose someone criticizes you harshly. If your perspective is narrow, you think, "They hate me, they want to hurt me." If your perspective is broader, you might think, "Maybe they are carrying their own pain. Maybe their words are more about them than about me." One perspective leads to anger, the other leads to compassion. The event didn't change, the words didn't change, but your interpretation shaped your response. There's a story of a farmer whose horse ran away. The neighbors came and said, "Oh no, such bad luck." The farmer simply replied, "Maybe." The next day, the horse returned with 3 wild horses. The neighbors said, "Oh wow, such good luck." Again, the farmer said, "Maybe." The following day, the farmer's son tried to tame one of the wild horses, fell off, and broke his leg. The neighbors cried, "Oh no, such terrible luck." The farmer calmly said, "Maybe." A week later, the army came to recruit young men for war, but because the son had a broken leg, he was spared. The neighbors said, "What great luck." And again, the farmer said, "Maybe." The point is clear. Events are not good or bad in themselves. It is our perspective over time that reveals their meaning. When you learn to shift perspective, calmness comes naturally. Because suddenly, life stops being a series of threats and starts being a series of teachings. Pain turns into growth. Failures turn into stepping stones. Conflicts turn into mirrors that show you your own strength. Perspective does not change the situation outside, it changes the experience inside. And that inner change makes all the difference. So the next time life feels overwhelming, ask yourself, what else could this mean? What lesson could this carry? How can this shape me instead of break me? You will be amazed to see how quickly fear turns into courage, how quickly frustration turns into patience, and how quickly chaos turns into calm. Perspective truly changes everything. Silence is power in a world where everyone wants to speak, argue, prove, and be heard. Silence often feels like weakness. But in reality, silence is one of the greatest strengths you can cultivate. Because silence is not the absence of words, it is the presence of wisdom. Anyone can shout, anyone can react, anyone can let their tongue run faster than their mind. But it takes inner strength to hold back, to listen, to let silence speak louder than anger ever could. Think about the last time someone provoked you. Maybe they insulted you, maybe they mocked you, maybe they were unfair. Your natural instinct was probably to defend yourself, to throw back words with even more force. But if you had chosen silence in that moment, what would have happened? You would have saved your energy. You would have denied them the satisfaction of controlling you. You would have let their words burn themselves out like a fire without fuel. Silence disarms more battles than arguments ever will. When you choose silence, you don't suppress your thoughts, you elevate them. Silence allows you to see beyond the noise of the moment. It gives you time to reflect, Is this worth my energy? Will my words improve the situation or make it worse? So often, the best response is no response because not everything deserves your reaction. As the saying goes, never wrestle with pigs. You both get dirty and the pig enjoys it. Silence is walking away from unnecessary dirt. Great leaders, great teachers, even great spiritual masters have all understood the value of silence. Think of a wise elder who doesn't rush to speak in a heated discussion. Their very silence commands respect because it shows control, it shows depth, it shows they are not shaken by every wave. When they finally do speak, their words carry weight because silence has given those words strength. Silence is also the foundation of listening, and listening is one of the rarest skills today. Most people don't listen to understand, they listen to reply. But when you are truly silent, when you absorb without preparing your counterattack, you begin to understand not just the words, but the emotions behind the words. You begin to hear the story behind the anger, the pain behind the harshness, the cry behind the noise. And when you hear that, your response is wiser, softer, calmer. Even in your personal life, silence has incredible power. In arguments with loved ones, silence can stop the fight from escalating. In moments of stress, silence allows you to turn inward and find peace. And in moments of beauty, silence allows you to fully experience the present. Whether it's a sunset, a prayer, or just the company of someone you love, nature itself teaches us this. The most powerful places are often the most silent. Stand in a forest, or sit by a mountain, or gaze at the stars. The silence there is not empty. It is full of presence, full of peace, full of truth. Your mind feels calm, not because there is nothing happening, but because silence is speaking to you in a language beyond words. So the next time you are tempted to argue, tempted to prove yourself, tempted to throw back words in anger, remember this: silence is not defeat. Silence is dignity. Silence is strength. Silence is the choice of someone who refuses to waste energy on things that do not deserve it. Use silence wisely, and you will discover that sometimes the loudest voice in the room is the one that doesn't speak at all. Gratitude dissolves stress. It may sound simple, but it is one of the deepest medicines for a restless mind. You see, stress is born when our attention gets stuck on what is missing, on what is wrong, on what is painful. Gratitude, on the other hand, is the art of shifting attention to what is already here, to what is already working, to what is already a blessing. The problem is not always the problem itself, the problem is often our focus. And gratitude changes that focus. Think about it. Two people can live in the exact same circumstances. One complains, "I have nothing. My life is full of problems." The other says, "I may not have everything, but I still have enough. I still have food on my plate, air in my lungs, people who care about me." The circumstances did not change, but their emotional world did, simply because of where they chose to place their attention. When you practice gratitude, you shrink the power of stress automatically. Why? Because the mind cannot fully complain and fully appreciate at the same time. If you are busy counting blessings, you have less space to count burdens. It is like turning on the light in a dark room. Darkness may seem overwhelming, but the moment you light even a small candle, the darkness cannot remain. Gratitude is that candle. It pushes stress out not by force, but by filling your mind with light. Many people think gratitude is only for good days, but real gratitude is most powerful on the difficult days. Imagine you are going through a financial struggle and stress is eating away at your peace. Gratitude in that moment is not about denying the difficulty. It is about remembering what still remains. You may have lost money, but you still have your skills, your health, your potential. That shift in focus gives you strength to keep moving forward instead of drowning in despair. There's a story of a man who was walking barefoot, upset with life because he couldn't afford shoes. His mind was full of complaints. But then he saw another man, smiling, peaceful, who had no legs. In that instant, his stress disappeared and gratitude flooded in. He realized he still had more than he thought. Sometimes